What are some of the most underrated games on PS5? Well, let me run you through 10 of them. Hello folks, it's Aaron here from Push Square. So yeah, you've got to admit, there are so many top tier games these days that it's easy for some of them to fly under the radar. Whether it is that their critical reception was a little harsh, or it's just not seeing the numbers that it deserves, there's nothing better than finding a hidden gem. But before I get into my picks, I just want to say if you're enjoying the video, then why not support us here on Push Square by subscribing to the channel where I cover all things PlayStation. Anyway, let's get into 10 of the most underrated games on PS5. Now, since this is my list, I'm going to start out with one of my all-time favourites that simply not enough people know about, and it's The Finals, a chaotic first-person shooter developed by Embark Studios, the people behind Arc Raiders, a team made up of a lot of ex-Battlefield devs. This is a game show-styled PvP experience where players will face off in fully destructible environments, utilising various weapons and tools to outmaneuver and outplay their opponents. As a huge fan of first-person shooters, this is a breath of fresh air, and even hundreds of hours down the line for me, it manages to remain as fresh as it was when I played it day one. At the time of recording, it's in its 7th season, adding a new map, the coolest cosmetics in an online game like it, and plenty of time-limited modes. This is a game that likes to give you stuff to do on top of its infectiously fun main mode and world tour, so if you're a shooter fan, please check this one out. It's actually free to play, so no loss on your end, give it a go. Evil West is the third-person vampiric western, and it has all the hallmarks of, like a classic PS3 era in the best sort of ways. It's linear and it's playable in either solo or co-op, but man, a game like this, it kind of reminds me of the good old days, when I was a teenager. I went over to a mate's place with a box of Iron Brew, that's a Scottish fizzy drink, on a Saturday night, and we would play into the wee small hours together. It's got some gnarly combos, weapons to switch up, powers to utilise, and some pulpy violence to boot. It's pretty firmly in the AA category, but it looks and plays really nice, like one of those games that makes you feel like a complete badass without too much of a challenge. You can actually pick this one up for pretty cheap for the most part, so if you're looking for 10 to 15 hours of casual fun, either yourself or with a mate, Evil West is a good shout. Pacific Drive is a very, very good game, but I also don't feel like enough people talk about it. It's a unique sort of survival game where you're exploring this weird and eerie place with an old family sedan, and you're tasked with gathering materials to fully customize and upgrade that car. With everything from tires to the sort of storage options you have, this is a surprisingly deep survival experience, and also something I think is really important to its success is the vibe. It looks great, and there's points where I was actually kind of freaked out, even if most of the time things are just sort of silent. It really gets you with its atmosphere and will keep you hooked with its addictive upgrade system. If you take Dark Souls and then gave it some guns, you'd have something that looks a lot like Remnant 2. Now that is a overly simplistic comparison, in all fairness, because this isn't some finely curated RPG. Now instead, it's got RPG elements with a fair whack of procedurally generated levels and the ability to play with two other friends. However, despite its procedural generation, Remnant 2 has some superb settings ranging from grand fantasy libraries to grungy sci-fi worlds. The procedural generation actually keeps the layouts fresh, but the look and style of them feel very much handcrafted, not to mention the myriad of great bosses and tightly controlled gunplay. I can't personally speak to how much the game has evolved since its launch, but it sure does have a solid foundation, making it a great choice for you and your mates if you're looking for something a little alternative, let's say. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora was completely written off by a lot of people as a Far Cry game with an Avatar skin. And while sure, there are some similarities, of course, it is Ubisoft, although the Ubisoft massive crowd, I actually think it deserves far more credit than it gets. For one, this is a truly gorgeous game that finally captures the magic of Pandora from the films. If you're a fan of James Cameron's movies, then you're gonna get a kick out of exploring the gorgeous sci-fi planes and interacting with the iconography of the series. But beyond that, this is actually a pretty cool hunting and gathering simulator. It's a much bigger part of the game than you would ever expect, and it actually kind of forces you to pay attention to its compendium of creatures so to know where to hunt them and in what conditions. If you strip away some of the HUD, it becomes incredibly immersive, and I had a great time exploring, hunting and foraging to upgrade my weapons and armor. It's a lot of fun. Now our next pick, it kind of breaks my heart to know that Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown just didn't do that well, or not well enough. This Metroidvania was the first new entry in the series in an absolute age, and it was genuinely brilliant. With a dense map to explore and some pretty tough combat to master, Prince of Persia was one of those games that, it just reeled you in. I racked my brain over how to solve platforming puzzles or how I could make my way past giant enemies that would one-shot me. It's one of those games that just asks you to lock in, pay attention, and put on your puzzle-solving hat. But sadly, it just didn't hit, or at least not enough, for the money that was put into this project. A sequel was refused, and the team that put it together were disbanded. It is a real shame because The Lost Crown is a great Wii experience. Teon had started to develop a knack for crafting up nostalgic movie tie-ins, whether that be Terminator Resistance or the next entry in my list, Robocop Rogue City. This is a AA first-person shooter, whereas the titular Robocop, aka Alex Murphy, you must deal out swift justice in a lawless, retro-futurist version of Detroit. This one, man, it's really for the fans. You're gonna just lap up all of the details and references to the movies. Even timeline-wise, if you care, this is actually set between the events of Robocop 2 and 3, where you have shadowy conspiracies to deal with as Detroit is hit with a new crime wave. It even has Peter Weller back to voice the iconic part man, part machine. Alien games can really be hit or miss. For every taut, intense alien isolation, we get a loud and dumb Aliens Colonial Marines. The history of this franchise is speckled with alright games as well. Like, I personally quite enjoy Aliens Fireteam Elite, or even the Alien vs Predator game from back in the PS3. But a recent one that I feel was kind of lost in the noise was Aliens Dark Descent. Now this is a top-down real-time strategy game where you must command a squad of colonial marines to make it out of a xenomorph-infested station. It's got a full-blown single-player campaign and a bunch of mechanics like stress meters for your marines that you need to manage. It is chock full of great wee details and feels like quite a dense experience in the best sort of way. Having been caught in a troubled development cycle for years before it eventually released in 2024, there was definitely an air of uncertainty surrounding Granblue Fantasy Relink. But those who took the plunge would find a stylish, satisfying action RPG, and Cygames' efforts remains one of the genre's most overlooked games on PS5. Relink's real strength lies in its cast of characters, each of whom are fully playable across single player and multiplayer missions. Everyone has their own unique fighting styles, skills, and ultimate techniques to master, all while grinding for levels and better weapons. Now granted, that grind is not going to be to everyone's taste, but Relink's story campaign alone is worth shouting about, and it's packed with fantastic boss battles and wonderfully realised locales. Once the combat system starts to click, this is a brilliantly fun fantasy adventure. And as our last little entry here from the developers of XCOM, Midnight Suns is a darker, supernatural take on the Marvel Universe, spun up as a tactical RPG, and while critically this one was lauded, it just didn't seem to make its mark with players. Firaxis is one of the best for, this style of strategy game, and mixing that with all of the cool characters found in Marvel's roster, you'd have thought that this was a recipe for success, but the game just didn't hit its sales target. If you're a fan of this universe and you love that tactical edge, there's a full-on narrative to enjoy, along with a turn-based, card-based combat system that utilizes all of the different abilities from all of your heroes, and you can even get unlikely duos and team-ups with your favorite heroes. It's great fun if you're into the superhero stuff. So there we have it, 10 underrated games on PS5. I'm not expecting these to be every underrated game ever, so do let me know your own picks down in the comments below, and remember while you're there to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more PlayStation video content just like this. Anyway, thank you as always for watching, and until next time, I've been Aaron, and this has been Push Square.